And then the way you cultivate, like you're literally cultivating talent in the sense that you're helping them find their kind of like mini why inside of your own business. And then you're building their skills for them. So like you're adding value in all these different ways. And you've mentioned value like several times. It seems like you have a really good understanding. Like even when you're pitching people the Soundshed studio, it's like you have to understand what I bring to the table, or else you're gonna think I'm overpriced. You're gonna get upset. Like, but you seem to have a really good grasp on value itself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's always driven by people. It's not driven by the outcome or the object or the studio. You can spend twice the amount of money on a studio and have a terrible experience, and like the value is perceived as the experience, not the money you spent. And that's what it is. It's the integration of the connection with the experience that people look at, whether they have the money or they don't, and that's why certain people value their money more than their time. Because they're at a place where they don't have the luxury of saying, well, I have enough money. If this goes wrong, then like they only have that one shot to get it right with whoever they hire to do it. So for them, they value with their money more because that's what's more important to them, because it's like, hey, like I want a studio. I only have this fixed budget, and I want to make sure I hire the right person who brings the most value, whether it's like in their pricing, and you can't get it all every time. But then when you get to that next echelon of people who are like, oh, money's not an object, their value is derived from, I don't want to have to interface with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to talk to you. I don't want to be talked to about technical things. Like, I just want this to be easy. I am paying you to do your job. And so those are kind of the two clients that you kind of work with to any degree. It's the client who says, this is what I have, this is all I can spend, and my value is based on not going over that budget. And if they have a terrible experience but they still get the same outcome at the end, there's a little bit more grace there. But this ultra wealthy clients who are like, don't f this up, because I'm paying you whatever your value to yourself is, and if you f this up, to them it's like, you made my life harder and I hired you to make it easier. Right. And that's a paradigm shift when you start to get into like wealth and building wealth. Is like, I realize the same thing. Is like, I value my time a lot more now, whereas like before I would work on my own car and like it was exciting to me, but then I'm like, man, if I do the things that I'm trying to save money with or whatnot, then like my business suffers, because that's an opportunity for me to have somebody else just kind of do those things for me. And it's not a matter of like, I don't want to get dirty, I don't want to do the work myself. Exactly. Like, I would love to spend every day just doing my car or going to the gym or whatever it is, but it's one of those things where I realize I have responsibilities now, and I think that's how wealthy people operate. I'm not saying all wealthy people, but people start to see value against time, and it's that monetary degree of separation between what am I getting, like how much easier is my life if I just pay for it to be easier rather than me doing it myself. And is this person like making it easier, or are they a pain in my ass? And that's one thing I've seen in sales with a lot of colleagues, where they kind of miss the mark. They want to ask too many questions. They want to over dictate, over analyze, over engineer. And it's a weird realization when you get into business. I've seen people post like, why don't clients value my time? Why do they go with the cheaper bid or blah blah blah? It's like, it means you kind of suck at sales, man. you kind of suck at client cultivation, and it's true.
Yes. Gosh, there's so much there we could talk about.
Well, how did you? Because your first client was Joe Rogan, right? So how did you come? How did you come to that understanding, like this understanding of value or whatever? Like, was this like right after Joe Rogan having such a big client, like off the bat, was that like something you immediately just like understood? Like, oh, okay, if I just go after big clients who are just willing to drop however much money, right? Like, you just understood that, or did you have some clients that you regretted having?
It's a trained awareness. You have to spend time reading body language and just verbal cues and things like that. So that instance wasn't the first. That wasn't necessarily a singularity that like made me feel like I understood the client.
Okay, yeah.
The first interaction was, how do I put this? not to get too cerebral with this, but like as humans, we want to prove ourselves. Like that's the first thing we want to do when we get into a room is size up the other people. Like our value is based on whether or not they perceive us as valuable. And so going into the room, strutting my knowledge and being like, well, this is the right way to do it, yada, yada. Like rather than being excited for the project, I saw the problems first. And that's what I was highlighting in that social situation. And like, that I realized that quickly. Like he didn't want to hear about anything technical, and I was like, okay, like I had already said what I said, and I thought I had lost the actual work myself because I was like, oh, you know, I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear. I should have just, you know, told him I'd get it done. You know, whatever. That was
give him a handshake and
yeah, that was my stupid engineering brain. But I came from an industry where like you are having to be the biggest person in the room and have to be the smartest person in the room because technology and AV isn't for everybody. And when they're like, oh, I don't want to spend money on this, then you have to explain to them, well, your IT is going to suffer, or this is going to suffer. So you have to like, it's almost you have to kind of poke your chest out and be like, well, I'm the smart IT guy, blah, blah, blah. So like, I was just conditioned to do that. But the moment I realized how to navigate those conversations with more awareness was I had this client in Croatia. So my second client actually wasn't Alex Hormozy. I take that back. My second client was this young guy, lived in Croatia, or the project was in Croatia. I think he lived in Australia, or maybe New Zealand. I can't remember. And he reached out. He's like, I loved what you did for Joe. And I want to do this project in Croatia. Can you guys design it for me? And at this point, I started assembling my team and people I was working with. And I wanted to show off. I was like, I'm going to get all my guys on these Zoom calls. So there were like 6 of us
on
a Zoom call for no reason other than for me to be like, look, we're legit. And so we get on this Zoom call with this guy. His name was Matt too. And of course. And he's telling me about his idea for the studio. And he wanted it to be underwater. Like an aquarium type of thing. Like a literal dome of glass with fish, real fish, like floating around. And
wow,
that is sick idea.
I mean, that would be a sick studio.
That's what I should have said. That's not what I said.
Oh no.
And that's what I learned. That's when I learned. You know, I was going back into this idea of like, this is going to be terrible for us. When it's going to sound terrible. We're going to have to trench all this concrete. How are we even going to get cables and lights? And it was this whole thing of having leverage in the conversation to make him feel bad about his idea before even like rejoicing in it, like being this cool thing. And I remember we get off the call. He was ready, you know what I mean? He's like, this is the guy. I want to build the studio. But at the end of the call, I could see the apprehension in his face. Ooh. And I questioned myself that night. I couldn't sleep that night because I'm like, man, like, I thought I had it. Like, it was right there. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I know what I did wrong. And I scheduled another call with him and maybe a couple of the team members. And we got on the call about 2 or 3 days later. And I was like, hey, Matt, you know, I realize, like, I should have been more excited about this project with you. Like, we're invested in this. And this is really cool. I'm sorry if I like burst your bubble with that, but like, we're gonna figure this out. Let's do this together. Like, it's gonna be challenging, but like, we're gonna be a team on this. And like, you know, what do you think? And he's like, send me the invoice. And
wow.
And that was the moment I realized.
Matt the closer.
Yeah, that was the moment I realized what had happened. It's like I wasn't invested in the client. I was too worried about the challenges I was gonna face and whether or not this was a good idea. And just not relishing in like his idea. And so we never finished that project. Like, I was right. I'm not going to say I was wrong. It was bad. It never went anywhere. I mean, we found one company in the entire world that was willing to take on this massive thing until we found out the room was so small that he was working with that would have been impossible anyways.
Oh,
Dang.
So anyways, that became a dead project. Like, we made money off of it and went nowhere. And anyways, like, that's just intuition versus good client cultivation at that point. But
Wow, what a crazy story though.
that was,
Man.
and it's funny that we're talking about it. I haven't told that story in such a long time. I haven't really even given it much thought, but yeah, those are the things in the past 4 years that, you know, you have those interactions with people, and that's what I mean. You learn more about yourself if you're aware enough and you want to. Because had I just said, oh, well, this guy, we're not going to work with him because his ideas are stupid, and like, you know, like I could have had my ego about it and just been like, well, I just did Joe Rogan's studio and just walked away and moved on to the next client.
If anybody, you had the freaking clout to do that.
I had the leverage to do it, but I just, it was really, again, I was just asking myself, what happened? You know, like, it was just like, that shouldn't have happened. Something just felt wrong, and having to swallow my pride and be like, I'm the problem. I was the problem.